Hi, I'm Paul Floyd, a military analyst here at Stratfor.
And I'm Scott Stewart, Stratfor's Vice President of Tactical Analysis.
And today we're going to look at the comparisons between Islamic State and Al-Qaeda, but we're also going to kind of note some of the very real differences and how those are just as important. What we've seen recently on the battlefield is that Islamic State has made some serious gains, and because of that and Al-Qaeda's relative quiet behavior, I guess, in comparison, there's been lots of mumblings that Islamic State is the more capable threat to the world in the sense of extreme terrorism.
Yeah, I think it's important that when we look at the differences between the two organizations, we really look at how they were founded and really what their objectives are as far as on the battlefield. When we look at Al-Qaeda, it was really formed as a vanguard organization intended to really be a global facilitator of the jihad to bring the caliphate to being. So we basically had an organization that was founded by a Saudi millionaire. But it was always relatively small. They never really posed an insurgent threat, much of an insurgent threat on the battlefield. And they always operated really under the leadership of another Islamic polity. And whether that meant, being stationed in Afghanistan under the Taliban or even in Sudan, they were always kind of subservient and never really ruled themselves. On the other hand, with the Islamic State and really its predecessor organizations, they were founded by Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, who was a Jordanian street thug, and really his organization has always really brought those characteristics with it. Not only have they been more regionally focused, but they've also been very brutal, and they don't really care about the big picture. They're very intransigent and very strict in how they do things, and they really don't care what the rest of the world thinks.
And I think it's also important that when you articulate who's a threat, you have to say who actually are they a threat to. So in the sense of, are we talking about a threat to the Western powers versus a regional threat?
Yeah, and that's one of the things we understand that these are militant groups, and they use different types of militant tactics. So they'll use terrorism, they'll use insurgency, they'll use conventional warfare, as we're seeing right now, with the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria. But when it comes to those various types of tactics, it takes different training. So someone like yourself, who's a former Ranger, you could be very good at conventional warfare or even really irregular warfare. But if I was to take you and to send you into a foreign culture and ask you to set up a terrorist cell and then conduct some terrorist operations, say a vehicle bombing, that would be a challenge for you because you really haven't received that type of training. And so in order to be able to kind of blend in, to travel, to set up clandestine networks, it's really more akin to espionage than it is conventional warfare. So there are different skill sets that require different training. And that's one of the big differences between Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State. Al-Qaeda has really been more focused traditionally on terrorism, on trying to reach out and conduct attacks in various parts of the world, to include in the United States and in Europe. And the Islamic State really hasn't developed that sort of capability or really even the training camps and resources at this point.
Especially on a global scale. I mean, we've seen Islamic State prove historically that they had good terrorist tactics in Syria and in Iraq, kind of in this regional sense. And now they've even, because of the recent battlefield situation, have become more conventional in their attacks, but still maintain those terrorist networks regionally. But when you talk about that global footprint and the ability to try and work something in Western countries, I agree with you. Al-Qaeda is definitely much more of a threat in that sense. That being said, one of the big things being pointed out is the idea that a lot of the foreign fighters that are working for Islamic State could filter back in and become a threat regionally. And I wonder if you could speak to that.
Yeah, no, that's an important thing to look at. But there again, if you have, whether he's an American or a British or a French jihadi who travels to Syria and undergoes the training there, they're being trained in kind of what we went through in the Army as basic training. So you're learning to fire your assault rifle, you're learning to throw grenades, use anti-tank weapons like the RPG, some physical training type stuff, small unit tactics. But that doesn't really translate directly into conducting mass, large-scale terrorist attacks in a non-permissive environment. Certainly we've seen recently we saw an American jihadi used in a car bombing. And that's one of the things, with the Islamic State and with Jabhat al-Nusra, they will combine terrorism even in their conventional tactics, where they'll use a car bomb to open up a checkpoint to be able to attack a facility. But at the same time, taking that operative then and sending him back to America to construct a car bomb and use it in an attack in the United States is really something quite different from what they've been able to do.
Fascinating, Scott, and thank you. For more on this issue and others, please visit stratfor.com.